org, or call 338-9877 if you're interested. Okay, I think that's all we're going to do for now. We want to get into our show, so we got a special feature right now that I want you to watch, and we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
I think peace with other faiths and other cultures is the only way that humanity will survive.
In a world inflamed in conflict, three men from different paths of faith come together to promote peace and equality for all humans.
I had seen so many news broadcasts that were portraying Muslims as AK-47 toting maniacs. They wanted to kill everybody. And I couldn't believe that that was an actual portrayal of the common, everyday Muslim.
There's a lot of misconceptions about the Jewish faith. When I was in college, I'm sitting on a couch and some guy's kind of hovering behind me. Finally, I just asked him, I said, "What the heck are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm looking for your horns. Yeah, I heard you were Jewish and I just wanted to see."
We pray for our communities to get better and to be better, to rid ourselves and our communities from prejudices and bigotry and violence and all of those evil acts that some human beings decide to do and follow evildoers.
Everybody wants peace. I mean, nobody wants war.
The children of Abraham.
Okay, welcome back. Watching Chautauqua Sunrise. I'm Doc Hamels, and in a moment I'm going to be introducing my guest to you. I hope that you paid attention to that trailer because that is going to be the kickoff to what we're going to be talking about for the next 36 minutes here. I remember seeing a commercial on TV recently where there was a rabbi and a priest, and they were playing chess or having coffee together or whatever, and they were thinking about what they could get each other for. I think it was for the holidays. I'll say Christmas, but I'm not sure if that will be right. And they mail each other a present. And it turns out both of them have bad knees, and they you see them pictured in their respective churches or synagogues, and they're both using these special knee pads, and I just loved it. And I think that sort of is going to be my kickoff today as far as loving each other, getting along each other, and understanding each other. Good morning, Joe Glarner, and welcome back to the show.
Morning, Doc, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Joe, you've been a busy guy since the last time we talked.
Always am.
And you know, we were talking earlier. We met at your bistro down in Frewsburg when I was playing down there, and since then we've kind of kept touch. And I've been keenly interested in your video productions and your movies and things like that. You talked a little bit about the Bigfoot Expo movie that you put together last time, and
yeah, we did a documentary. Yeah. We do a lot of. I like doing educational documentaries and things like that.
Joe, not everybody may know who you are, so why don't you give us the old elevator speech of who's Joe Glarner?
Oh, geez. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm the musical director for the Episcopal Missions of Warren County.
Okay, I'm going to keep track of your titles. There's one. Okay.
And I do 2 church services there a week, a Sunday and a Wednesday service. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge passion of mine. I actually grew up in that church too, so it's more than just a job for me. And we have a great music team that I get to work with, several of them actually. We have 2, and it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. I really enjoy that work, and it's keeps me busy. So I play anything from like the 7th century to what you might hear on the radio today, okay, for like contemporary Christian music and stuff. And then I have a studio where I do corporate video production.
There's 2.
Safety training, film scoring, all kinds of voiceover work. We have green screens, Wow. It's a big facility in downtown.
We talked about putting a green screen here where I would have Randy riding a bicycle in the air behind me or something.
Make sure you got a light meter. That's all I can say. Just make sure you got a light meter.
Okay.
And then I own a couple of different music schools.
There's 3.
There's the Warren Music Conservatory. Okay. We have 20 teachers, over 150 students there.
Yeah. Whoa.
And that's kept me busy for about a year and a half now.
I bet it would.
We just opened a new branch in Kane, Kane, Pennsylvania, and we're getting pretty busy. So I'll teach down in Kane on Monday nights. I teach in Warren on Tuesday nights.
I'm going to count that as another one. Okay, here's four.
Okay. And then I also teach, I'm starting a new guitar program at Sound Rhythm Studios in Jamestown.
Oh, I know those guys.
And
Chris Cotter, those guys?
A TR.
McCotch.
Yeah, so you can find me there on Thursday nights teaching guitar. I wrote a guitar book this last year.
That's a writer. Okay, here's another one.
And
okay.
so that's in its last revision right now. I have an uncle who's got his PhD in music theory, and he's been kind enough to edit it for me. And I had a couple things I need to change, and we're getting into the last run of it now.
Nice.
And so then we're starting another pilot school up in Fredonia this next month too, at Chautauqua Audio Works, where we have, in between all the schools, we have 37 music teachers. So, musicians, as you know, have a hard time making a living, and over the years That's
why I stayed in my teaching and administration role.
I've always had to be creative about, how I was going to feed my family, and the studio has always paid my bills in teaching. So that keeps me rather busy. But, and on the side, I like to make documentary films. I like social justice, and I like to educate and invoke conversations that maybe we won't find on national TV. And so maybe that's why you had me here today.
Because as my viewers know and my listeners, we talk about local issues here.
Yep.
We don't go to the national or international unless something's really, really like pertinent. But everything's local anyways, You forgot last time you told me, and I never knew this, you're a jingle writer too.
Yep, I do a lot of that. And right now you can see me and hear me in about 6 languages right now for a company called Royalty Gem. Yeah. So I did this video to help inform people about the product and stuff, and so now we had to hire different voiceovers in Arabic and in Spanish and German and French and all the Russian, and so you see me and I just listen, Joseph Glarner did, and so right now you can see me on YouTube yelling at people on late night TV all over the world. So,
that's cool. Yeah. I always enjoy talking with you, Joe, and today's no different. You contacted me, as I recall, and said, I got this project and we need to talk about this. And you sent me the trailer, and I looked at it and I go, whew, yeah. And so I guess I'm going to just step a little bit outside of my context that I usually stay locally and just say this much. It hit me very hard when I saw the trailer that we all just saw just now and listened to, is that at least this is the flavor of the world right now that we're living in, is that people are misunderstanding each other, that people are categorizing each other, that if you wear this kind of clothing, if you have this kind of accent, if you go to this church, you are this, which is wrong.
Very wrong.
Okay?
Very wrong.
And so when I saw the trailer, I said, we got to do this. So we're here now.
Yep.
So why don't you walk us through the whole thing? What's Children of Abraham all about?
Well, a good friend of mine and a staff member at the church I work in, Tim Dyer, he was a deacon at the time he started this project, and now he's an ordained minister. He was working towards his bachelor's in theology at the time, from Clarion University, I believe, and was having an issue with the baptismal covenant. It was how do you seek and serve Christ and love people in all of your neighbors? And for him, he thought it was easy to love his neighbor who, lived down the street. It's easy for him to love, someone in a different community 20 miles away. But what about his neighbors that live halfway across the world? Right. And so he was having a struggle with a lot of news that he was seeing and things about terrorism and all this animosity that we're always being inundated with. And he went on a journey. He went on a journey to hopefully find people from different walks of faith that maybe wanted to have this dialogue with him too. And he did. He reached out to actually a gentleman here in Chautauqua County, which is why it's so pertinent to your show. Okay. Sam Qadri.
Okay.
And Sam
he's a known entity here?
Yep.
Sure.
He does PR for the Islamic Society of Jamestown. He's been living in Jamestown, I think, for over 20 years now, and has been a teacher at Jamestown High School. and he also is a driving instructor. I've gotten to become friends with Sam, and I love him to death. He's a kindred spirit. He's got a big heart, and he has a completely different church than I do, and a completely, different culture that he came from. So Tim reached out to Sam, and it was reaching out to different Muslim Americans to try to have a dialogue and to have a discussion. And he found that Sam was more than open to this, and actually found that since 9/11, Sam himself had taken it upon himself to go to different Christian churches, on his own, to have a dialogue about the similarities.
So they were kind of running parallel.
They were already running parallel, and so when they joined together, it was a no-brainer that they wanted to go together to different churches and community groups to just have a dialogue that they might not necessarily hear. And so a gentleman, a Jewish man named Harvey Stone, who's a really successful civil engineer from Warren, Pennsylvania. He lives there. I believe he was born and raised in New York City, somewhere in the Bronx or Brooklyn, He joined them for the first couple of years of him doing it. I think Harvey's retired and living in Florida a lot, or where I think he stepped away from the group as much as he was. But for a couple of years, they were very active as the three of them. So you had a Jewish man, a Muslim, and a Christian. A priest.
Into a bar.
Walk into a well, they would more or less say coffee house, but anyways, it's a really interesting story about a broken family that needs reconciliation.
A broken family.
Yeah, and I talk about the family of Abraham. Everybody.
Oh, you're not talking about a local family?
No, I'm talking about
We're talking biblical.
I'm talking an ancient family, and we don't even have to necessarily say biblical. Yes, it's in our Bible, but it's also in the Quran, and this is also in a lot of the Jewish teachings too. So the Torah.
Wait a minute. You're saying this precedes the Bible?
Yes.
So it goes back before these things were even written, probably.
Before they were even necessarily written.
There was no news reporter at the time.
Well, the King James version of the Bible is what we currently probably look from. There is the NIV and other versions of it, but before that, a lot of these texts were kept by the church, and they weren't publicly for sale or accessible. Okay, right. But a couple thousand years before Christ was even born, this is when this story is taking place.
Right.
So people have heard. Maybe they've heard Father Abraham had many sons. Many sons had Father Abraham. I am one of them, and so are you. So that song is about a man named Abraham who was living in his father's land, and at that time there was a lot of idols. So someone would carve a statuette or something, and they would put it up, and they would worship it, and they would have many of these idols,
bulls and snakes and whatever. Yeah.
And Abraham had this clear vision, as it's recorded, that God came to him and said, I am one true living God, and Abraham had this thought, well, if I could make this idol, why would I worship it? And so he was impressed upon him, or spoken to him by God, that he should leave his father's land and go resettle somewhere else, basically.
Okay.
And so the biblical version of it is different than the Torah and the Quran's version of it. There are slight changes in the way the story is told.
Okay.
But I'll tell you it from the Anglo-Saxon version.
Okay. Go for it.
Okay. So in the Bible,
okay,
it tells us that Abraham left his father's land with his wife Sarah, and they were actually getting on in years at that point too. And in the Bible, it says that they had Sarah had a handmaiden named Hagar from Egypt. Now in the
wait a minute, we're talking about a woman named Hagar?
Yeah,
that's a Viking.
Well, in the Quran, they don't call Hagar a handmaiden to Sarah. She's actually considered a second wife. Okay, so there's differences in the story, but I'm going to tell you the biblical version of it, because most people in our culture are going to be able to relate to that version of it better. So So they leave Abraham's father's land, and years pass on, and God came to Abraham and Sarah and promised them a son that was going to be,
they're like 100 years old in the storyline, if I remember right.
Yeah, well, it's close.
Old.
Yeah, old. And so basically, he was supposed to be the heir to many generations to come, and that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars.
Pretty hard to do when you don't have any kids, yeah.
Yeah, and they're getting on in years at this point, and so Sarah becomes very frightful that this child is never going to come, and tells Abraham to lay with Hagar to make this son that God had promised. And so he does. And the son that comes is Ishmael, okay? So a couple years go by, and Sarah, miraculously, at like the age of like 70 or 60 or something, however it was written, or 90, I think it's 90.
Yes, let's go older. 60's not that old.
Don't quote me on the age, but it was, it was an age that even today we would go, whoa,
Yeah, whoa, is right.
So she had a son named Isaac, and so what happened was this. Sarah became very jealous of Hagar and Ishmael, because now she thought this promise of all these descendants or something would go to the other son, not the son that she had with Abraham. And so she tells Abraham to send them in the desert and to get rid of them, basically. And so much to his dismay, he does. Now, this is another part where the story changes.
Right.
This is another part where the story changes, and it's good for us to know both sides of the story. Okay. So the biblical version is Abraham says, "See ya," and they go into the desert, and that's done. Now, as far as I understand, in the Quran's version of it, and my Muslim friends, the way they've been told the story is Abraham actually takes Hagar and Ishmael into the desert. And miraculously, she pleads with God. She can't find water for her son, and so the biblical version of it, he just kicked him out, and she finds water, and even in the Bible it says that they were promised that God promised Ishmael and Hagar that they also would be the heir of all these generations. Okay, and so what happens is a water well appears, and they're saved, and he goes on to be a magnificent archer, and she finds a bride for him, and so this. But in the Muslim faith, they believe that Abraham took Sarah and Hagar, took Hagar and Ishmael. This is
I understand.
And took them to this place where we now know it as Mecca.
A different spin on it altogether. Yeah.
So Mecca is supposed to be this place where Father Abraham took Hagar and Ishmael to be safe.
Okay.
And so that they could have a safe place to live and thrive there. And so this is Mecca, and this is why it's such a holy place for them. Okay. So, now here we are, 5,000 years later. Fast forward, and so there's a lot to talk about, and what's happened since then. There's a lot of stories. Before the show today, some of your crew was talking to me, and it can be exhausting, because it really ultimately, I think this story is about a broken family, a family of humanity that needs some kind of reconciliation. It needs some kind of healing. It needs some type of narrative or dialogue that is unlike the narratives and dialogues that we're currently hearing in a lot of our major media outlets and a lot of our major news networks, and politically, people are pushing a lot of ideology right now that is dangerous. And we've spent generations trying to fight this kind of hate and this kind of misunderstanding. And we think it's time for education. We think it's time to have a different narrative to this story. So instead of looking at our differences and how this story evolved, instead of looking at how different we could be, this film is really talking about the similarities.
All right. So there's a common
thread that all these three monotheistic faiths have, because Hagar and Ishmael were direct descendants for our Islamic friends that are Muslims.
Okay, so that's that part.
Yep. And so obviously Abraham had Isaac, who was a descendant for the Jewish lineage.
Okay.
And as Christians, that's where we come from, the same place.
So
right?
they split.
So they split from there. Right. So the tree of prophets is this really interesting thing I saw once in a mosque here in Jamestown, where it showed a lot of the different prophets and how they branched off and how we were more related than we were different. And so I thought this was a beautiful thing that they had in their mosque to show how we were all, intertwined, and that our beliefs at the core are really more similar than they are different.
And then if we take it to the next level, you take various Christian groups who split off from there, and I'm sure, and then you got the Jewish, they
same
split
thing
off.
there, and the same thing with the Muslims too.
So each of those have like cousins to cousins to cousins, but they all go back to one person. Abraham.
Denominationally, we have differences.
Right.
Okay. And but spiritually, we really all believe that there's one God. And so I guess this is the common thread that we all have to remember, that we are worshiping the same God Abraham worshiped. We are all talking about the same concept. And our faith, through theological context, helps us better cope with the world around us. And it helps us better relate to humanity at its core and how we should be treating and talking to each other.
The whole time we're having this discussion, I'm thinking back, probably I was still in college, and a friend of mine invited me to her church. It wasn't the same church I went to. And I was there, and I'm listening, same prayers, same concepts. And then I invited her to come to my church. And she says, "What's with all the kneeling and up and down?" They didn't have kneelers. They didn't have that. They just they sit. And then at the end, they get up and leave.
Sure.
So it was sort of to me, it was a funny thing because I hadn't thought about that before. That was a very minor difference, but we still had the same.
It's a big difference to her, though.
But she was very forward.
Yeah, and I know this as a staff member in the Episcopal Church that even though, theologically we are the same as a lot of the other churches.
The interpretation of it all.
But our interpretation of it and how we do it, how we worship,
the rituals,
the liturgy and the wording, the vocabulary that we use, the Eucharistic prayers that we use. There's a lot of history and heritage behind that isn't going to change anytime soon, and people choose to do it or they don't, and take it or leave it. But the differences just in between one Christian church and the next can be drastic, is what you pointed out.
Right.
And so think about the differences in between different faiths now. So how do we get a culture like ours to have a better understanding of their Muslim friends or their Jewish friends, And I guess what the film is trying to get at is these three gentlemen made a commitment to each other and to their communities to try to advance the education of each other's different cultures and their different beliefs, so that we feel more similar than different.
And we understand why one church you kneel and one church you get down on the ground, why you would have bread, one doesn't have bread, one why?
I still struggle with the rattlesnake handlers down south, but
at least you can ask the question instead of standing back going, "What is this?"
Right.
Why are you doing that? And then when you understand, oh, that's why you do it. Okay.
If humanity is to survive, if humanity is really truly to survive and thrive, people that have been a part of this film project, and this just isn't myself, I'm speaking about the people we documented, Sam, Tim, and Harvey.
Right.
They truly feel that education and a loving heart is the first place to start, and trying to make that step of understanding.
All right, let me see if I grasp now the beginning of all this. So you had an individual who said basically, I need to get a handle on how I feel towards other religions. And other people were doing the same. And somehow or another, they got together and formed this triumvirate.
Yep.
A Muslim, a Jew, and a Christian, right? And then they wanted to say to the world, not let's say the world, the community about them, their friends, their churches, and that we need to do a better job of understanding each other and also explaining where we come from, so that, as you said, we find our similarities rather than our differences. The difference really aren't that big of a deal when you look at the amount of similarities that there are, and so then how did you get involved?
Well, I guess for me, I was watching what Tim was doing, and I he was making an announcement that the Children of Abraham Project would be here, and then they'd be here, and so
so the three of them,
they were already doing this.
So these three guys were the Children of Abraham, the three of them.
Yep.
Oh, all right.
So they were doing these talks, and they were engaging different community groups and churches in this type of dialogue. And I said to Tim, who was my friend, I said, this needs to be documented and spoken about at a much larger level than you going into a church with 12 people. This is something that more people should be hearing about, and more people should have a better understanding of. So I said, why don't we try to make a little, educational documentary film? Since I do that, since I think I would like to take some spare time over. It took us 2 years. We had to take some time off in between because life gets in the way. But it took 2 years for us to, sample together some different clips and interviews. And there was some magnificent artwork also done by Crystal Joy. And there's an animated section of the film.
I gotta go back and look for that.
And so, I ended up learning a lot through this process too, and discovered.
What did you learn?
Well, I learned a lot.
Well, just things that come to mind.
For instance, I learned that maybe I was closed-minded in many ways before doing this film. Maybe I didn't.
Were you surprised by that?
I guess I was. I always tried to maybe pride myself that I was a progressive thinker, or I was pretty well educated, but. I would learn new things all the time that just made me feel, like I wasn't informed as much as I could have been, and so it definitely made me slower to speaking so quickly, and listen more to people, and try to see life from their lens, not just my own, and so getting to know Muslims and becoming friends with them on a personal level. Changed me, as I think it would just about any white kid from Pennsylvania. This isn't something that I was used to. I wasn't used to having friends that were from a different type of faith or from a different.
Why would you? When you think about it, you're
right.
grown up in a homogeneous setting, and you're not exposed really.
Right.
But that shouldn't be holding us back, though, right?
It shouldn't, but I guess,
But it's easy to fall into.
It is easy to fall into that trap, I guess. I came from Warren, Pennsylvania, which you were just talking about, city of 10,000. And I lived in Los Angeles and New York City before I was 21. And then I lived in Portland, Oregon, and I've traveled all over the country playing music. So when I didn't live where I currently live, I was exposed to a lot more diversity, a lot of different people. And I had friends that were Muslim. I just didn't get into that place where I actually understood how we were related. I didn't understand what the similarities really were. And I didn't even understand the differences they even have in their own faith, like we do and maybe in our culture too. And I'm not even gonna say faith, our culture.
Right.
Because we have people that are atheists. We have people that, and we all live together. We can all live in peace together and have a conversation without it turning into a fight. And what I learned, I think, really was that, the average everyday Muslim, despite what they want to tell you on TV, is not out to get you. Sure, there is a portion that is radicalized, but the same could be said about our culture for different ways, okay? And so we both deal with, looking at the less of our society, looking at the lowest, of our culture, that's what's being focused on.
Right.
And that's not fair. That's not fair.
So
my Muslim friends.
What would the Muslims say about those radical ones that want to come out and get us?
Well, let me tell you, a couple of years ago, there was 70,000 imams that gathered.
What's an imam?
It's like a priest.
Okay.
And they gathered together to rebuke violence in the name of faith. No one covered it. No one
How many?
covered it. 70,000. Okay, that would be
That's
like
too Chautauqua.
that would be like the entirety of like one of our churches priests getting together and saying enough is enough. You cannot be preaching love while you're out there.
That's like half of Chautauqua County.
Right. And so it wasn't covered, and I think that's really unfair. And I brought this up to a couple of my Muslim friends once, and they just started. Yes, we know that this has been something that culturally they have tried to rebuke this violence, but time and time again, they get represented by a few people who are trying to use their religious beliefs as a way to gain power for their own personal agenda.
So is this the old saying that only negativity sells newspapers?
Yep.
Sells commercials.
Yep.
Isn't that sad?
It is.
It
is.
It's being filtered by money.
Yeah, and so when it really got down to it, I just said to my friend Tim, I said, more people need to know this. Need to know this dialogue. They need to hear this conversation.
And that's why you called me.
That's why we're here.
Because we don't get filtered here.
Right. And so Channel 5, we're hoping, is going to be able to screen the film too for the viewers in Chautauqua County here.
So let's talk about the movie now. The film. We call it a movie or a film? What's the difference?
Either one.
Either one.
It's really a documentary film.
All right.
It's a movie, I guess, would be more,
I don't know. All right,
Fiction.
the film. All right, so how can people see this film besides here? Because this is going to go on the radio, and they may not be able to access 5.
Well, we're going to be debuting the film here shortly. It might even be on Access 5. We do have a couple churches and a film festival or two that are interested in screening the film and premiering it. And so just follow us online. We have a Facebook page, The Children of Abraham.
Okay.
And if you search us, give us a like, and we'll be able to point you in the direction of where you can see it.
So on Facebook, you just put Children of Abraham, and that will come up?
Yeah, and you'll see the 3 faces of the gentlemen that were in the trailer.
Okay.
And we're pretty easy to find. And I'll invite you to the page so you can share it with viewers.
Yeah, we'll post it to the Chautauqua Sunrise. Folks, you're watching Chautauqua Sunrise, and we're having a great in-depth discussion with Joe Glarner about a project called Children of Abraham. And just to recap, we seem to have our cultures that all go back, and our faiths that go back to one man. That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is. Yeah.
But you know what? You could be an Abraham today, or I could be an Abraham, and we have to be careful what we create, right?
Yeah. I think ultimately, it's really about, what do we want out of this conversation? What do we want by having this conversation? And that's just a better understanding of each other. Instead of having animosity and fear rule our lives and rule our culture and rule our news, well, why can't we just have a different dialogue and a different narrative? And we do have that power. It's through nonprofit stations, it's through online media, it's through social justice initiatives. So I just encourage people to not be afraid of someone if they see them dress differently or worship differently, or have a conversation, get to know that person. You might be surprised, and you might find a friend.
I'm sort of the opposite. I'm really never afraid. I'm really curious,
Right.
and then I feel stupid to say, do you have hair underneath that veil, or
Right.
why do you wear those? I want to ask that question, and I'm hesitant to because I don't know them. But if I had the opportunity, I would, because that's just how I
Sure.
am. And I remember when I worked in the inner city up in Buffalo, I worked in the Afro-American community quite often, and the kids would come up and they wanted to stroke my hair because it was totally different. And they were trying to get me to do an afro, and so I said, well, I don't know how to do that. So they were telling me all the gels to use and things like that. So I'm always into these sorts of things. I'm very interested in differences and similarities at the same time.
Sure.
And so it's really cool. So as far as the film, if somebody down the road wanted a copy of this, how would they get a copy? I mean, is this something for general distribution, or how are you going to do that?
We really haven't done this project as a for-profit.
No, well, I'm not saying for
film.
profit, but what if they do want a copy of it?
If they do want a copy of it, message us on Facebook,
Okay.
and we'll make sure that you get one and have access to a link. Right now, we want to give film festivals an opportunity, and maybe stations like yours, an opportunity to screen it. We can't release it technically because a lot of film festivals don't want it if it's released. So there's got to be a reason of value of why they would screen it at their film festival. And so when films get made, they usually spend the first couple of years in film festival circuits.
Right.
So far we've been denied by 20 festivals, which and it's not because it's not a good film. It's because it's a taboo subject, and a lot of them just want to stay away from it.
I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and this would not have been a taboo subject then.
No,
no,
it would have been welcome.
What happened? All that work we all did back then, it seems like it's gone away, and we're back to this closed-minded.
We've had a couple festivals though that were really excited, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, this is really original. This is real." Because online and out there, I've seen a couple like exposés, a couple shorts, we'll call them, about this subject, but nothing that took it into a feature length, and nothing that really went into detail and the things that we did in this film. So this is really a unique documentary, and I know PBS of Pennsylvania right now is taking a look at it, and they're considering out of Penn State and their Philadelphia station. Hopefully they'll feel like they should be having this discussion too.
All right, I want to talk to my viewers and listeners right now. Folks, I encourage you to take Joe up on this invitation to go to Children of Abraham on Facebook. And is the film posted there yet?
The trailer is there.
The trailer is there.
Yep.
Check out the trailer. The quality is beautiful. The sound is excellent. It's rich. It's well done. This is going to be worth your time and effort to at least listen to what's being said to get started on this topic. This isn't just a cheesy little thing, that somebody did in their living room or whatever. This is really an excellent film, and the quality is excellent, as I said. So now
Original
what?
film score too. I scored
Did you?
music to the whole film.
It's beautiful.
Yep.
Joe, we've got 1 minute and 11 seconds left. Did you want to talk about the Bigfoot exposition, or did you want to talk? Well, I mean, you got
Am I
the
allowed
last
to hold this
yeah,
up? Okay,
yeah, sure.
So we did a film a couple years ago called "I've Seen Bigfoot" right here, and right here's Bob Gimlin over here. Bob Gimlin from the Patterson-Gimlin film, and Steve Calls from Discovery Channel. He hosted Monster Quest, and it was a pretty popular show. And so you can find we have a movie night going on October 13th. And you'll find it's over at Camp on Yassa, and it's really cool. We'll have filmmakers and monster movie makers there, and then the expo is on the 14th, and I will be there filming the expo as usual and possibly speaking about the subject. It's been a fun, it's been a really fun ride. It's the 6th annual expo. Bigfoot and Sasquatch enthusiasts coming from all over the country for this event.
Well, I'm going to try to make it this year.
It's really fun if you've never seen it. It's also fun for kids. There's lots of kids events, and good time.
Joe Glarner, as always, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks, Doc.
You have really spiked a lot of interest in my mind. Folks, check out Children of Abraham on Facebook, and hopefully you'll be able to watch the film here on Access 5. We've run out of time. I wish we could talk further, but we'll do this all again next Saturday morning right here at Access 5 at 9 a.m. And as always, you can watch this show over and over again on YouTube once we get it posted. Have a great weekend. Happy Labor Day. Take the day off and just relax a little bit out there, will you? So let's remember our Jewish friends, our Muslim friends, our Protestant friends, our Christian friends, whatever, big, little, red, green, orange. We're all in this together. Let's love each other and take care of each other. I'm signing off, and we'll see you all again next week. Take care.